We're on. Maria, you can unmute yourself and begin. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So let me start again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the monthly breakfast of the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay and the director of the Dispute Resolution Center. These breakfasts have met live in New York City every month since 9/11 on the first Thursday of each month. This breakfast is number 234. Everything seems to have changed, including what we're experiencing in mediation. Holding this breakfast is one of the few remaining connections to our normal life, even though we are virtual. This is the time that we usually hold our breakfasts. It takes a village every month to produce our breakfasts, and we are very fortunate to have with us this morning as co-hosts, in addition to myself, Julie Denny, Chuck Newman, Matthew Latimer, and Nikki Borofsky. COVID-19 is signaling a tipping point for the mediation field. Most of us have been accustomed to being trained in person and practicing in person, being the person in the middle to build bridges and to help people to have a difficult conversation. Today, we're shifting to mediating in a virtual world. Before I turn this over to Julie, I wanted to share that we have lost 2 members of our dispute resolution listserv and of the breakfast community. Professor William Helmreich, who is a distinguished professor at City College, who was our speaker for the November breakfast on walking in the streets of New York, and Susan Ingram, a mediator, a family mediator, a family and divorce mediator, both lost their lives this past week to the coronavirus. Take good care, everyone. Wash your hands and maintain physical distance. I can't thank Alex Yaroslavsky enough for leading this morning's breakfast. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from around the world. And we'll deal with our different jurisdictions shortly. Julie.
Thank you, Maria. We are thrilled to have Alex, who's an old friend of New York City mediators, running this particular breakfast. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction of Alex and then turn it over to him because he's a font of knowledge and we all need it since we can't meet face-to-face these days. Alex is an executive coach. He's got more than 20 years of experience coaching, teaching, mediating in a lot of different industries. He coaches senior leaders in developing internal brands, building coalitions, working with competitors, managing shifting roles, as well as managing career transitions. You're going to be in great demand, Alex, I suspect, with the COVID repercussions. He holds a master's degree in Industrial and Labor Relations from Cornell and a bachelor's degree in Marketing and Business from NYU's Stern School of Business. He sits on a number of mediation panels, FINRA and the New York State Supreme Court Commercial Division, the CCRB, the NYCLA. These are all panels of mediators that many of us in the New York area are familiar with. He's not only a highly qualified mediator and coach, he happens to be a technical guru. And that's why we brought him on today, to help us in this new Zoom world figure out the niceties of this technology as dispute resolvers. So there will be, I noticed one comment was, I wanted to hear about mediation, not about Zoom. I suspect that the focus is on Zoom, but in the context of mediation and dispute resolution. So he's highly qualified. We're thrilled he's here. Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Julie, very much. And good morning, everyone. Thank you. Let me share my screen with you, and you should all be able to see the, let's see. Yeah, you should, tell me if you're all able to see the screen I'm sharing with a slide that says mediating in a virtual world. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So let's begin. And to answer the question from the person who asked, yes, we'll be talking about mediation broadly and Zoom specifically. So let's see. Okay, so we don't need this slide anymore. Julie, I think, introduced me well enough. Thank you very much, Julie. I know many of you from years in the field, and I do arbitration, mediation, coaching, and consulting. So let's begin actually with a poll. And normally these things are done at the beginning when we ask people where they're from. But now with the use of technology, we can demonstrate it a little bit by asking you to self-identify and answer 2 questions. So I'm going to launch the poll now. And now those of you certainly who have video should be able to see it, and you should be able to respond where you live and work, and your professional affiliation. And where you live and work, you only have one choice. Presumably that's either you're here or there, but your professional affiliation, you can choose more than one. And so I'll just take a minute to ask you to fill out both, and then we have a sense of where our guests are from.
Alex, this is Rebecca Ratliff. Can you hear me?
I can, Rebecca.
Hi, good morning. I'm in Atlanta and I'm hitting obviously east of Mississippi, but I'm not able to submit. Are you going to advance us to the next question, or am I supposed to be able to?
There's a
you scroll
second
down,
question.
you'll be able to see it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex, can you tell us how to set up the poll?
Setting up the poll, you can ask me as a question later. Hold that question and I'll walk you through it if we have time. Okay. So we have, I can see that we have 200 of 305 people who've submitted answers so far.
I'm on an iPad and I don't see how to answer the poll.
Did you see the poll come up?
It just says poll on my screen. There's nothing else.
And if you press it, you don't see a window that came up? I'm not sure. I don't have an iPad, so I can't tell what it looks like.
I'm on my iPhone and it came up. You had to scroll, but then I hit a thing and it closed it. Now I can't finish it.
Oh.
It's closed.
And I'm on a computer and it just has the red poll screen.
Maybe it timed out.
All right.
I could answer, but I could not submit.
No problem.
Yeah, that's what happened, and then it went to this poll.
I think if you scroll to the bottom, you should be able to do that. Okay.
So the poll has only 2 questions, right?
So yeah, what I'll ask you to do actually, if you could, is mute your phones now. Just I want to avoid crosstalk, and I will share the results right now. And we have enough of data to see where people are from. So we have at this point 239. So I will share the results. Oh, and it's looks like I cannot share the results. I'm wondering why that is. Hang on one second. Well, Zoom is somehow preventing me from sharing the results, but I can tell you that 77% of the people are from the metro New York area, followed by east of Mississippi 15%, and a few west of Mississippi, some from Europe. We have a few people from Africa. And in terms of professional affiliation, we have a lot of, we have 19% arbitrators, 43% attorneys, 10% coaches, 3% HR professionals, 65% mediators, and a few ombuds, teachers, trainers, students, and others. So let me move on, if I may, to the presentation to give you some insights into mediating in the virtual world. So my goal for today is to give you a little bit of the big picture of what's happening. Second, sorry, here we go. The pros and cons, best practices, and some tools, including Zoom. So the big picture is simple. Technology has matured. There are more tech native people in the workforce. There's a huge cultural shift now with oh, if you can mute yourselves, please. Let me just do that. Hang on 1 second. Okay. And so there are cultural shifts with COVID-19 that have made it more permissible now to do things remotely and even more necessary. And so the future is definitely going to be more virtual. With this movement to more virtual, there are some pros and cons. So in the real world, you know, there are certain advantages. For example, people have said to me when I was doing this talk that you can get more of a sense of a person in the real world. You can say hello, you can shake their hand, or used to be able to do that. You can read their body language. It's a more intimate setting, especially for mediators who make their living doing this sort of work. And there are also some informal opportunities for trust building, for informal negotiation. You walk over to the bagel table, you chat up the person or the attorney, and you build some trust. And so that piece is lost with the virtual work that we might be doing soon. There are also higher barriers to exit. So, you know, there are the mediators who say, I will be the last person to be dragged out of this room kicking and screaming. You're here, you've made it all the way here, you're not gonna wanna come back here, let's do this deal. And so in the virtual world, it's easier to say, not now, click, and we'll reconvene. And so that's true. But in the virtual world, you also have more advantages. You can work remotely. So we see now we have over 300 people today at the breakfast, whereas for people to come physically into New York, it's more difficult, especially for people who live on the West Coast or in Europe or in Africa. So, so there's a lot more flexibility to reach more people. On the accessibility piece, it's also easier for people with disabilities to access mediation and a mediator in this virtual world. And of course, there's a piece of safety. Safety sometimes in the biological sense, as in now, and safety could be physical safety if you're doing divorce mediation and the issue is issues are there are hot and people don't want to be in the same room. It can provide just a measure of distance, and that might be helpful to actually have a good outcome in a mediation. You also have low overhead. Low overhead in terms of just paying for an office and in terms of travel time. So the idea of trying a mediation, it's the inverse of high barriers to exit. It's easier to say to a person, let's just try the mediation. Log in, here's the link, and if it doesn't work, you have these other avenues that you can pursue. So I think it would make people more likely to sign up to give this a try. And of course, with virtual mediation, you have more tools. You can share screens like we're doing now. You can have easier scheduling that I'll talk about. You have easier document processing, and you can have easier payment processing. So with that, of course, we have some growing pains. So for the mediator, there's a change. It's a change of doing business. It's a change of thinking of your practice. It's a change of thinking of how to manage the process. There's also the infrastructure and software you need, and we'll talk about some of that today. And then there's the learning curve of using the software and what happens if something goes wrong. For the parties, there's also change. There is, they have to figure out now how to show up, how to download their infrastructure and software. And there's a little bit of maybe loss of control, whereas before they come in, and so there's a sense of familiarity. I've been in a waiting room before. I kind of know what it's like, maybe if my mediator has prepared me. Now I'm clicking some buttons and all of a sudden I appear on the screen, plus I have all these issues, plus I can't mute myself, or I think I'm speaking, but I was just muted. So there's a sense of that discomfort that I think we'll deal with until we can become comfortable with technology, like with any technology before. The one new consideration, I think, for virtual mediators is who is in the room. So in the in real life situation, who's in the room. It's very unlikely that a person will come in and surreptitiously have an earpiece from their lawyer telling them what to say. But in the virtual world, it is possible for someone to be on camera, and then there could be someone else off camera listening in, holding a notepad, etc. And so there are these considerations that need to be taken into account and dealt with, and we'll talk a little bit about them, of how to mitigate this. So it's a real reality. It's not a reason not to do a virtual mediation, but it's just something to think about, that you only have a narrow view of the person you're dealing with. So before I go on to best practices, I want to see if there are questions that people have that would be helpful to answer now. I'll take a few minutes and then I'll move on if there are no questions. Nikki, Maria, does anyone have any questions they want to float to me? Nope, I see no. Good.
Not in the chat yet.
Great, okay.
I did send one.
Sorry?
I did. This is Patricia DeGare.
Oh, Patricia, yes. What is your question?
I put a question out with when you discussed disability, you did not mention the hearing impaired nor the sighted impaired.
Yeah, so for people who are hearing impaired, Zoom offers actually a way to do closed captioning. So it is possible to do that. It actually turns out that I could do this even on my presentation today. I'm not doing it because I think it may be distracting, but if you see, I just turned it on and you can see that Google, this is not Zoom, but Google captures my text and displays it in real time. I don't know what Zoom's feature is for this, but I know they have a closed capture option, and that might require someone typing, perhaps, or you could do something like this. Thank you for that question. Okay, so let's move on to best practices. So in this, I'll talk about these areas: anticipatory guidance, appearance, lighting and background, some noise issues, and your desktop and notifications. So one of the ways to make your clients comfortable with mediation or any new process is to follow the rule of the airlines. We remember not too long ago, we flew often, and we saw cabin crew give us these presentations, and we got used to them, right? We know what that means. Go here and put on your life vest and make sure you put on your own mask before helping someone else, etc. And what they're doing is giving you anticipatory guidance of how to be a good passenger, how to deal with the airplane as a technology, what to expect, when to expect it, right? Should we experience cabin pressure, your oxygen masks will drop from the ceiling, etc. What the rules of the road are, as in like no smoking, right? Federal offense. And just in case plan B, you got your cushions for your flotation device and so on. And it would really be helpful for mediators to give a document of some sort to your clients, letting them know what it will be like to mediate virtually. And here I've compiled some of these. So to me, they fall into three areas: technical, legal, mediation, and process. And I'll just mention them briefly, and you're welcome to create your own document for what that will look like. So on the technical side, you want to let them know what the hardware is. Do they need to have a computer? Do they need to have a fast computer? Does it matter if they have a phone? Can they do it on an iPad? What the applications they will need, like Zoom or maybe DocuSign. their internet connection, right? So they'll need a good Wi-Fi connection. Some security issues, as in don't use public spaces and Wi-Fi. Excuse me. I thought I muted my phone, but I guess not. Okay. To have them log in early and test their system, and to have a backup plan. So if something doesn't work, what to do. On the legal piece, you want to let them know what the applicable legal requirements might be in your state. Typical confidentiality agreement. Add to that a privacy agreement, as in no recording. You will not record the Zoom session, and they shouldn't record anything. Now, can they record something? Sure, but they can also, in a real world, bring in a video, their phone and record, put it in their pocket. They can wear glasses with a camera that you won't see. So there are people, if they want to disobey the rules and break your rules, they can. They can also do it in the virtual world. And we have remedies for these things. You also want to talk about transparency, as in no eavesdroppers. That's how you deal with the issue of who's in the room. In the real world, that's not necessary because you see who's in the room. But in the virtual world, you probably want to have some language talking about transparency, that you want to make sure that everyone knows who's listening, and then whoever is not there isn't listening. And then there are some process issues. So there's the fact that you will be in a waiting room. So when we first start, you will be in this area where you were today until Nikki admitted you to the main room. Talk about focus and interruptions, as in silence your phones, and focus for the next 2 or so hours on this mediation. Talk about some etiquette, as in one person speaks at a time. Now, of course, you have the ability to mute them and so on, but you don't want to do that. That's disempowering to them. So what you want to do is have people behave and mute themselves, unmute themselves, etc. And you also have, just as an added feature, a backup channel. So you could have one person speaking and another person vehemently disagreeing, and they do that by sending you a chat message. And as the mediator, you now have this piece of information you can deal with without making the other person feel interrupted. You also want to talk to them about screen sharing and what it means, document sharing, and breakout rooms for caucus. And I don't think we can demonstrate the breakout rooms today because of the size of the audience. Zoom has a maximum limit, I think, of 50 rooms and 200 people, and we are way over that. But in a mediation context, you definitely have that. And I'll show you a video later on of how to set up these breakout rooms. So let me pause now if people have questions. Nikki, Maria, any questions that people have?
Alex, there was a question from Kira about how to handle confidentiality when others may be listening off camera or elsewhere. I know you, that was one of the things you mentioned, but it was a particular question that also came up.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so the way you do it is typically you have people sign a confidentiality agreement that they agree that this is a private conversation, it's not discoverable, nothing they present can be held against them, nothing they hear should be divulged, and it holds the same in the virtual context. No difference, other than this idea of no recording and no eavesdroppers, and they have to agree to that.
James Kinney has raised his hand.
Yes, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, please. Nope. Okay.
Yes, no, good morning, I'm here. I had a little difficulty unmuting. Good morning, everyone. Alex, curious about backup plan. I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings over the last month. Sometimes folks are on a computer and a handheld device. I think there's some problems with audio at different times.
Yep.
But another part of the backup plan, I'm curious, as a mediator, would I have, say, set up the mediation on my computer and maybe have a laptop available in case I'm having problems with the computer? I can shift to the next device if needed. Is
Absolutely.
that the thinking behind backup plan?
So there are a couple of them. You should definitely, and I have a slide on this, you should have redundancies for sure. And the other backup plan is if all else fails. So what happens if, let's say, Wi-Fi goes out? Someone's digging a trench outside your office and all internet is lost. What do they do? A good backup plan is try logging in once, and if you can't, then call me on my cell number. As long as people know what to do, they're calm. It's only when you don't tell them and then something happens and then everyone's in a panic. What do I do next? So let them know what to do next and they'll just do it. And the worst comes to worst is you reschedule the mediation by phone. Thank you for the question. So let me proceed.
Sorry, Alex, I don't have one of these hands up things on my phone.
Oh, sure.
But I wanted to, along those lines, what if the meeting room is locked and your computer dies or breaks or you lose internet and then you want to switch to your iPhone because you can use cell service? Can you get in if you had joined before?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep, sure thing. And I've done this. I have joined as myself onto different devices because a camera on my phone works better than the camera on my old laptop. And so I projected my camera from that, and I didn't project the image from my desktop, or my laptop, and that worked just fine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about appearance. And I have some hot links in this presentation. So I want to play for you. And can you see the YouTube that's about to play?
A small finger, a worm,
a lamppost,
tiny sword,
a walking.
So let's see. I'm gonna wait for the ad to. YouTube is being very crafty now. They make you listen to this whole thing.
But I believe in democracy. So tonight I have decided not to wear a suit from the waist down. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's enough. So that's Stephen Colbert, the day before yesterday on national television, not wearing pants. So granted, it was late night, but you get the point that in this modern age, you want to be dressed professionally, at least from the waist up, to make a good impression on your clients. But what is below the table and below the camera is your choice. I can tell you today, just because of the size of the audience, I am wearing pants as I'm presenting this.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes.
As a woman, for women, you can wear your PJs, just have a lovely scarf and drape it around you. Lovely big scarf.
Perfect.
No one sees below that.
Perfect. And in that case, avoid getting up. If you just be aware, and we'll talk more about the importance of being conscious of the camera. So next, I want to talk about lighting. And so hopefully you can see me today because I have a window here with indirect light. And I also have a light that is on my other side. When I have work later in the day, you can see the change, if you can see subtly, that I am being lit from this other side where I don't have a window. And so I'm thoughtful about my lighting when I do this because I want to avoid some of these bad lighting situations of either being very brightly lit or being backlit, which is really bad. You look like you're in the witness protection program. Or if you don't have good lighting and you look blue because the blue screen of the monitor lights you up. So that's something that we want to avoid, and I will talk later about what gear you might need for that. So let's talk about background a little bit. Some of you have asked this, and you can definitely have different backgrounds. So I want to show you this picture, okay? And if this were your mediator, you might have second thoughts unless you were mediating an astrophysics dispute. So this person is a little bit spacey, a little bit grainy, not particularly realistic. You also don't want to have a real background of your law office where all your client files are located, because it's not a particularly calming view from the person watching. On the other hand, take a look at this picture, right? Where the person has a nice background and looks pretty relaxed. And here's an example of a real office setup that you can rent for, if you drum roll please. And so look, if you wanted to download this image or the complete bundle, it would only be about $30. So think about how much you're paying for your current physical office and compare that with the nice setup you can have for 30 bucks. And if some of you are wondering whether I have my own office here, I can tell you that this is a virtual background, and this is what it looks like, let's see, when I have nothing. So I like my virtual background, and I actually downloaded mine from the internet, and you can do the same. So let me click here and move on. Okay, ambient noise.
Can you explain how, please?
How to do it? Yes. So you have to download the desktop client for your Zoom account, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And it is only in that desktop client that you can upload new images. The images should just be high quality, and they can be any image. You can upload a photo of yours as long as it's high quality and it looks nice. If it's low quality, it'll look like the space guy. And if your computer is slow, then your computer will have a problem processing that background. So you may be better off without it. If I use my old laptop to do this, you would see me a lot more in a lot more grainy way. It wouldn't look nice. I wouldn't do it. But you can experiment with that.
Alex, do you want to know that people have raised their hands, or you want to take questions in a minute?
So
Eric Runbacon raised his hand.
Yeah, okay. Eric?
Yeah, hi. I was interested in knowing about what the problem is with Wi-Fi. Should we be using only hardwired computers on this?
No, not necessarily. When you say problem with Wi-Fi, are you referring to the security issue that I mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a warning for clients. So for you, you want to be on a private connection. You definitely don't want to be doing mediations from a Starbucks, even if you can get a good background. And you want to advise your clients to also not use Starbucks or public Wi-Fi because it's not secure. So if someone's, let me just mute everyone. Should I? Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting some background.
Folks, if you, I'll ask one of my co-hosts if you could just mute everyone, please. So if you have a situation where someone's transferring files and you have a hacker and it's the Wi-Fi is not secure, there's a potential of that information leaking out. The chance of that is small, but just as a precaution, you want to advise your clients to have a secure connection. And Zoom is a secure platform. There are other secure platforms. I'll mention them as well. But you want to make sure that you're using a sharing program that is security compliant, so it can't be hacked.
Thank you. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, other questions?
So Alex, just a comment. What we were talking about before, if you're in a situation where you absolutely have to mediate or conduct your Zoom conference in a public environment, but you might want to download or have on your computer, and you have to make sure everybody who's participating has this as well, is something called a virtual private network, also known as a VPN.
Yes.
It's way beyond the scope of this discussion, but if you have that set up, that's a possible workaround in a situation where you have no other choice but to use public Wi-Fi or a public resource.
Yes, thank you, Lon. Yes, so yes, so technically you can make these things happen, but I think if you're launching a mediation practice, that would not be the first thing I would worry about. I would worry about these other things, and it's just easier to tell your clients to get a private connection. And if your clients can set up a VPN, it's not really hard to do, you just have to know how to do it, then you have some sophisticated clients. Thank you, Alonzo. Fair, very fair point. Okay, ambient noise. I don't know if you remember Robert Kelly. You might better remember him thusly.
If you're serious about your business, you need to build systems.
So I won't go through this. YouTube is making us watch too many commercials, but you may remember the BBC interview where he was giving an he was talking about the, I think, political situation in South Korea while his toddlers showed up in the room, and his wife made this pro move. I have a screenshot of it, trying to rescue him from his kids. So you want to avoid these types of noise disruptions. So think about when you're doing a mediation about privacy, and think about any colleagues if you're sharing an office, family, children, or pets, and think about how that might affect your mediation stance. It's not the end of the world, and it's kind of funny, but in terms of best practices, you want to be thinking about that noise issue. Next is desktop. So clean your desktop. You see, you want to go from this busy one where it has your client names and all kinds of documents and all kinds of agreements that someone can either read or take a picture of, and it's just none of their business. And have a clean, serene desktop where there's really nothing to look at. It's a clean surface from which you can work. Similarly, on your browser, if you have a lot of toolbars or a lot of bookmarks, you want to get rid of them and hide them, and there are ways of doing that. We won't talk about how today, but you can definitely look that up on Google, and so that your browser, the browser you're sharing, is a clean browser. And you can see that I've done my best to do that, where I've maximized the area for viewing as a result. Next, notifications, including phone. As you can see, mine rang, even though I thought I put don't disturb, and I didn't realize that don't disturb doesn't mean it won't give me phone calls. So Facebook, your Gmail, your Outlook, your Yahoo, your Messenger, your music, your WhatsApp, your Slack, your phone, and others. Mute them, remove them, and you will be surprised, actually, despite all your efforts, how many of them will pop up until you realize, oh yes, I forgot that one. So you want to just make sure that they don't interrupt your setting. One more thing about sharing screens. There are two ways in which you can share screens. You can share the physical screen of your monitor so that anything that pops up on that monitor will be visible, or you can share the projection of the application, in which case only that application will be shown. So the way that I displayed my screen today is I'm only showing you the presentation itself, not what's on my second monitor. And that's another way, just another safeguard in case I get a notification, you won't see it because it's not part of that application. But if I was sharing a monitor and the notification came up on that, then you would have seen it. So this is where we're talking about the Department of Redundancy department. You want to have a belt and suspenders strategy of having a second laptop, having a second microphone and earpiece, which I have here. You want to have some batteries in case you have a keyboard, for example, that I have right now. It's a battery operated keyboard. It's a Bluetooth keyboard. So one day my batteries will run out. I don't want that day to come right now. And you also want to have your Netgear label or maybe a picture of it in place in case something happens and you don't want to be diving underneath your desk in the middle of a mediation looking for your router. So all those things you want to make a list of, and you'll probably get 80%, 90% there, and then something will happen eventually, and then you will add that 95th% onto your list. And also mind your audio and video. When your light is on, you are on the air. And there have been some memes going around the internet lately of epic fails on around that. I won't share them with you at this early hour, but if anyone is interested in Googling Jennifer Zoom fail, do so after this presentation and you will see what I mean.
Alex,
Questions?
it's Chuck. I wonder, yeah, this might be the perfect moment to pass along a question from Henry Kolonovsky.
Sure.
Over the last 3 or 4 days, there've been a lot of backlash about Zoom. Any alternatives? As
Yes.
an example, there's a headline that Elon Musk's SpaceX bans Zoom because of privacy concerns.
Yes. So great question, Henry. I will actually talk about that. I have some slides a little bit further in the deck that'll speak exactly to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joe Siegel also had his hand raised, but I can't tell what that was about.
Okay. Joe, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Oh, I was.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a question. It goes back a little earlier when you were talking about the opportunity to check your chat box to see if one of the parties has something they want to let you know kind of behind the scenes while you're doing the mediation. I find it very hard to check my chat box while I'm engaging visually with people. And I wonder if you have any tips about how to do that.
Yeah, some of it is just practice. And it's, for me, it's arranging my screen in such a way that I don't have to click too much. So I have my, my screen here that I'm looking at. I might have a screen here, which you'll see that I'm looking over here. And then my chat box is on my right. So once I have my dashboard set up and I'm comfortable with it and my eye knows where to go, it's much more comfortable. So I would just say practice on. You can practice with a friend, just so if you ask them to give you a half hour, so you can play with that a little bit. Great question. Nikki, did you want to ask a question? Okay. Okay.
No, you're going to get to it later, so I'll hold for that.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some tools, including Zoom, and then in that Zoom discussion, we'll answer Henry's question as well. So I want to share with you some of my digital toolbox of the kinds of things I do, and then we'll talk about some infrastructure issues, and then your virtual world gear, and then we'll get to Zoom as well. So here's my digital toolbox, and these are apps that I use a lot. So I'm a fan of Gmail. I like them because it's free, it's unlimited storage, it plays well with many things. There are many integrations for it. It has a calendar, which I also use, which also integrates with everything. And also I use Google Drive and backup and sync for handling my files, and I'll show you that in a little bit, as well as Mixmax, Acuity, and of course, Zoom. Just fair warning, if as I talk about some of these things and you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we might have some topics like Mixmax and Acuity that we might not be able to get to as a result. But I'd rather cover your questions than just cover the entire tool set, because I have more that I didn't put in.
Alex, I see a hand up from Lou Blanchard. Lou,
Okay.
do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. You were talking about moving your banner, your chat box over. How do you move the bottom banner? Because mine is at the bottom.
It depends on your setup, if you have an iOS or you have Windows, and it also depends on whether you've maximized your screen or not. So it's hard for me to answer specifically, but
Okay.
I would say just say tweak with that. Yeah, play with that and see if you can tweak it. Okay, what I'm going to do is also lower. Oh, there we go. Look, yep, thank you. So Google Drive. Google Drive is available for the Mac. It's available for the PC. And if you see, I have hot links here so that you can actually, if you download this deck, you'll be able to go there and download it if you like. I have that for the PC as well. And so what that does, it synchronizes my files with my desktop and the cloud. So on my left, you can see that I just took a snapshot of my files on my computer drive, academic, it's business, etc. And then you can books, and then you can see that replicated at the bottom on the cloud. It's the exact same folder structure because it synchronizes automatically. As soon as I make a change in my Word document, that document is reflected and uploaded up to the cloud. And then on my right side, you can see the details of one of those folders where I have 4 documents that look like they typically would look on a desktop. And those documents are also synchronized to my cloud. And what that allows me to do is work on either laptop. I have my backup laptop or my primary laptop I can do it at home, I can do it anywhere. And as long as my laptop has the same Word software, I am independent of my first laptop should it break. And so I find that very helpful, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind to know that if something should happen, all I have to do is get it into the laptop, download, backup and sync, log in, and everything will come down.
Alex, Sabia has a question.
Yeah.
Sabia?
Alex, the same can be achieved for those who use Office 365 with OneDrive. I'm
sure. Yeah, so I'm just sharing, this is my setup, and if you have OneDrive, I don't use it very much, but it's just as good. So if you're a Microsoft person, you can do the same thing.
Is there anything wrong with Dropbox? Because I use Dropbox. Is
Nothing wrong with Dropbox. I'm just sharing my tools. I have nothing against it. Some people say it's not as secure as some other repositories, but unless you're dealing with very confidential financial information, I think, and if you have good, strong passwords, I think it's perfectly fine.
Sabia,
and I actually have Dropbox as well. I just don't use it as part of my business. I use it to share files with people who have Dropbox.
Sabia?
Yes, Alex, 2 questions. My cell phone was on silent, but it rang on my computer just now.
Yep.
That was one issue. And with that, the slideshow disappeared and came back eventually. So that was my first question. What do I do so that it doesn't ring on the computer?
Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an I person, so I don't know. I imagine there's a way of silencing that. I think Apple's doing you a favor by letting you know you have a call. But I don't know what your setting would be to silence that.
All right,
I'm just glad you're back with us.
The second question is that with your slideshow up on the screen, on the right side, the photo gallery of the participants is showing up vertically, and it's blocking off some of the script on the slide.
I see. I think you could probably adjust for that by minimizing that strip. At least I have it on my view.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay. So let's talk about document processing a little bit. So you have 2 options there, at least. There are others, but you have at least 2. One is Adobe Sign, that is $15 a month. And the other is DocuSign, which is about $25. And I also have a link here to Gartner's comparison of the 2. So you are free to go and check it out and see if you, I'm just going to close these, as you can compare the 2. I like Adobe Sign. It's just as good as DocuSign, but DocuSign is more popular. So I think Adobe is later to the market. For other software, this is more for lawyers, but not necessarily. So I have other links for you about a paperless law office, as well as credit card processing. There are many credit card processors that you can use to send out bills electronically without having to do the old invoice that you then email and then wait for it to be paid. I have a link for that, but it is too deep a topic for today. So I'm just letting you know that that's something you might want to consider to get paid faster and easier. So let's move on to infrastructure. And so this is, I don't know if any of you have done this, but I would recommend it. If you click on Google and you go to speed test, you can actually measure, don't do it right now, but you can measure the speed of your connection. And you can see this morning we're doing okay, we're early enough, so my speed is pretty good. You only need 25 megabits per second for one video call. So if you're living in a studio and you don't have anyone else in your space, then 25 megabits is fine for one Zoom call. So when your phone company or your cable company tries to offer you 300 megabits per second for maximum speed, that might be overkill. On the other hand, if you're in an office and you share that with 3 coworkers who have Zoom calls at the same time, or you're in a house where you have family members who are streaming Netflix and someone else has their own Zoom session, etc., then you want to be thinking about 25 megabits per person at the same time. So you want to have, this gives you a kind of an order of magnitude sense of how much bandwidth you need to be able to do video conferencing. Let's move on to gear. So for a video conferencing, you want to have your laptop, you want to have your earbuds, you want to have a diffused light source. And so I'm going to click on this and I'll give you a sense of how much that costs. It's about $50, not that much of an investment for good lighting. And that'll make the difference between you, I'll close that, between you being able to be seen as sort of front lit as you want to be seen, as opposed to being backlit or being subject to the sun moving, etc. So I would highly recommend investing in something like that. You also want to have a second monitor. I think it makes it easier to have Zoom calls that way, and a good high definition camera, which also runs, if you don't already have one, at around $70. That's your investment. Just a little note about earbuds. I like to have mine wired, not wireless, because that's my backup, so that if something happens, I'm able to still connect without worrying about a charge. And I also like to have only one in my ear with a mic hanging here, as opposed to both, because that allows me to hear the environment outside and not lean in and yell too much into the microphone if I can't hear myself talk. So this is just an example. This is a tweet that Savannah Guthrie of NBC News put out on March 18th. She was doing, again, a nationally televised show from her basement. And this is the foot is that of her husband / producer in that basement. And if you look at his technology, what does he have? A laptop, a couple of screens. Of course, there's an expensive camera because that's for a national broadcast. But if you take a look, she has 4 light sources. She has 2 lights from this direction, a light that shines on her this way, and a light from the back that shines on her from the back. So that's how important lighting is. On the other hand, it looks like she's doing the show barefoot. So while she's wearing pants, it stopped there. So you can see that's not that big a deal. Whatever the camera doesn't see, even on national television, but you want to be lit well. Okay, I'm going to pause here before I go to the next section, talk about mediating with Zoom for any questions. I see we have one.
Art Eagle raised his hand.
Yep.
Bart, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. Thanks. Thanks, Chuck, and thanks, Alex. Alex, a while ago, you talked about having a clean desktop and having your browser clean as well. I've been on Zoom calls now for more hours in time than I'd like to think over the last couple of weeks. My desktop and my browser doesn't, to my knowledge, doesn't appear to anyone who is participating on the call, and I'm not seeing anyone else's. So why is that important? How does that become an issue?
Only if you happen to click when you share your screen, I'm going to share my desktop. And if you do it before you maximize your screen, then people will see the desktop in its native form before you cover it with something. So if you always maximize your screen first and then only share that screen, it may not be an issue. But as a best practice, I recommend it because my bet is one time something will happen and people will see your native screen. I've seen plenty of them. So that's best practice.
Susanna Mancini raised her hand.
Yes, hi Alex, good morning. I have a question. How do you check yourself? I hope it's not a dumb question, but how do you check yourself on your appearance, the lighting, before you go on the air, so to speak?
Yeah, actually a great question. And Zoom does that for you. When you log on, Zoom gives you a little preview window of what you look like on camera before you join a call. And if you're running a Zoom meeting, then just start the meeting a few minutes before anyone comes in, set them up so that they have to join in the waiting area, so you control when they come in, like we have today. And then you have the room to yourself, and you can look at yourself, you can adjust your screen, you can adjust your lighting, and you could make sure that you look the way you want before admitting your participants.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to move forward now with mediating with Zoom. We'll talk about issues and features, talk about what's under the hood, and then I'll answer questions that you might have. So before we talk about Zoom, I just want to let you know that while I like it, I am not a Zoom representative, and you have Zoom alternatives. People use Jitsi, and I have, I believe, links to these. Yep. So there are links to Jitsi if you want. Signal is another one that is in the public domain. I believe it's shareware. And then Ilan recommended freeconferencecall.com, which also works well, and I believe it has a video feature as well, so that it's just an alternative to Zoom. If you prefer one of these and you tell your clients this is what I use, and you know how to work these and what to do with them, what their features are, by all means. So I use Zoom, and many people do, because Zoom has a lot of powerful features like the breakout rooms and polling, et cetera, and chat that's all integrated, and that allows for kind of a seamless experience. But there are polling tools, and there are chat tools, and there are probably other software for breakout tools that you can find. So if you don't like Zoom and want to do it yourself, you're more than welcome. As long as you tell your clients what they should be experiencing, they won't know the difference unless they work for Zoom. So let's begin with pricing. Zoom costs approximately, if you get the professional version, $180 a year. So just to give you a sense that everything we're talking about is in the hundreds of dollars. And so you can probably, for $1,000 a year, set yourself up with enough technology, maybe excluding a laptop, and maybe not, to allow yourself to run a virtual mediation practice. So I just wanted to give you that so you understood. So now to a question that Henry asked. So there were some issues with Zoom and privacy. And Motherboard reported, for example, on March 26th that Zoom sends data to Facebook. And so if you click on this, now note the date. Today is April 2nd. This is March 26th. This is very recent. And let me tell you how quickly things move. If we click here, then we see something on March 27th, a day later, that says Zoom removes code that sends data to Facebook. So things happen now in a matter of hours. And when I was preparing this presentation last night, I went through all my links just to make sure that things were as I intended, even though I created the presentation very recently. And in fact, some things did change. Zoom, I will show you, Zoom changed their links, and I had to relink to something new that they had. So these things move very quickly, and Zoom apparently is pretty sensitive to these things. And I also have a link here to Zoom's privacy policy, which was updated March 29th now, about the use of technology. So these are real concerns, and because of how connected we are, and because of Zoom understands what position they're in, that they thought they were just a kind of a cool business collaboration software company, and now they've kind of become the Netscape, you know, or the Microsoft Explorer, if you remember the 90s, of the current age. They're trying to be sensitive to what's happening in the world. So these concerns are real, and it seems like Zoom is addressing them. And I would just want to make sure, Henry, if that answered your question.
Alex, we have another question from Cheryl.
Yeah, yes.
Cheryl Agris.
Oh, hi. I was just wondering about Skype, what your thoughts are. It was actually suggested by a potential party.
Yeah, Skype is fine. You know, I think they were Microsoft Suite now, and I use them sometimes when other people use Skype. So if someone tells me they'd like to Skype with me, I don't have a problem. But when I'm thinking about how to structure my own practice, I don't know that Skype has a breakout room feature. And I think for mediation, I would want to have that.
Okay. Alex, we also had a question earlier from Pierre about the possibility of creating a separate breakout room for counsel and parties, different from the plenary session room. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And different from the caucus room.
Absolutely, you can do that. Yeah. So it's really easy to do, and I'll show you a video on that. Because of the number of people, we have 302 people right now online. Zoom just isn't able to support that. But if it were, I would be able to do it. It's very easy to do. You click on a few, I'll show you a film on that very briefly. You'll get the sense of it. So we can't
Alex,
do it.
I'm sorry, it's Chuck. Just to follow up on that, you can't create a breakout room where the host is not present and just put an attorney and a client together?
No, you can create any breakout room with as many people. The only limitation is right now we have just a size limitation on the Zoom, what Zoom's able to handle. But in your mediation of fewer than 50 people, you can create as many breakout rooms as you want, up to 50. You can put one person in them, 2, 3. You can join them. You can go in and out of those rooms. So you have a lot of features, and they're building new ones.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the next topic around Zoom is Zoom bombing. So I'm sure that many people have heard of this, and this has been an issue. So Zoom bombing, if those of you who don't know, is when someone who has nothing better to do decides to disrupt a meeting by joining a meeting and then taking it over, or disrupting it in some other way. How can they do this? So one way is let me back up a little. Zoom was created as a in-group collaboration tool. In-group meaning the assumption was that people who know each other want to collaborate, but they may be in different areas. So how can we make it easy for them to share information? They did not think about how can we design a system that will keep out bad people, because that's not why people get into this business. So as a result, they have erred on the side of sharing, and then their defaults were set up in such a way that allowed people to do nefarious things. So as an example, you forget when you set up a meeting to only limit screen sharing to a host. So you will leave a setting that says anyone can share a screen. If you're sending your link to known people, that's fine. But if you're sending your link out to the Twitter world and you post a tweet saying, let's have this collaboration on how we can help each other, everyone join, because Zoom can handle it. People see that tweet, they join. If you don't have any admission policy, like a waiting room where we asked you to register for that reason, if you don't have those issues, then people come in, you don't know who they are, and then they start either by taking over, or if you don't know how to mute them, they will just unmute themselves and speak over everyone, or they will post a background that's disruptive, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all the kinds of things that can happen. And the only thing you need to do to deal with that is set up the settings correctly. So as a Zoom host, you need to know what to click as a default. And that's one of the reasons why we asked everyone to register with Wild Apricot with ACR-GNY, and then again with Zoom, so that Zoom knows who you are, because we wanted to avoid this issue of people getting in and us not knowing who they were. Zoom has a blog on this. They have some guidelines for what you want of how to, how to restrict people from doing things you don't want them to do, and you're welcome to read that as well. I don't think of it as a big deal, because as long as you know how to handle Zoom, and if you have a mediation with 10 people, let's say, chances are they're paying you for your time, they're not there to disrupt the meeting.
Alex, a question came in on how to share documents in the room. Did you want to cover that later, or as part of your not sharing the screen message that you just gave?
Yeah, I can talk about it briefly. I think I have a video on how to share the screen. The way you would typically share documents is by displaying a document in your window and then sharing that window with the other people. You can also do it through a file share service that Zoom has, but I don't think it's necessary in the context of a mediation. What you really want to do is display a document, or you can display a Google document if you want, that people can edit online. So you would have a situation where if I wanted to do that, I would create, for example, right now, I would go and I would create a Google Doc here. I would then share that, because I'm sharing my screen, and you would be able to see, and as I am typing in a document, you are able to see what I am doing. And then if we were in a mediation, you can say, I object to that term, change that hello to hi, etc. And that's a very easy way to collaborate. Good. Other questions?
Cheryl Agris has her hand up again. Shirley, you might be on mute.
Oh, yeah, no, it was just the same question. So somehow it got repeated. So
Oh, okay.
don't worry about it.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what's under the hood with Zoom. So people asked about how to change the backgrounds. So this is the place where I want to talk about that. There are 3 flavors of Zoom. There's the web version, the desktop, and the phone. They have similar functions, but not every flavor has the same exact functions. So for example, you can start a meeting from your phone or your desktop or the web, but you can only upload the background using the desktop version. So what you need to do is download this desktop client from the Zoom site, zoom.us. Of course, it's available for Android, it's available for Windows, it's available for iOS. I'm sure it's available for Linux as well. So generally, the way I use it is, I use the web version for scheduling meetings, the desktop for running meetings, and my phone for participating in meetings. That's how I use it, but you can explore it yourself. Just know that these things aren't always aligned in terms of their features. So if you can't figure out how to do something in one version of it, you might think about, let me try if I can find this on the other flavor of Zoom.
Alex, do you mind if it's Chuck? If I could just, because we have people with different levels of sophistication about computer technology. When Alex is talking about a client, he's not talking about the people we work with. A client software is a small piece of software you put on your local computer, which is designed to work directly with the remote computer called a server. So that thing that you download you could think of it as an app for your computer.
Right, like Word, like Excel. Thanks.
Walter Ruby has raised his hand.
Okay. Can you hear me? So, Alex, I just wanted to ask one question. In terms of your background, where I see this incredible, office, home, whatever it is. I'm not, and I understand you showed earlier that in fact that's not really where you are.
Right.
The question, I'm just wondering, does that give any kind of a false understanding to people? I mean, is there an ethical question about that?
I think it's
I'm raising this as a general question. It seems to present you as, a very wealthy person. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but I'm just curious about some of those thoughts.
Right, yeah, well, that's why I wanted to share with you where I was really coming from, so you have that sense, an idea. It's up to you what you want to have. I picked this because if you're curious as to my reasoning, I picked it because I think it looks calming, it looks nice, it looks nicer to me anyway than the background, the white sort of background that I have, although it may not make a difference once you get used to it. So I will just show you that for my presentations, I use this one. For my mediations, I use more that one, a more relaxed approach. And I'll just continue with this if that's easier. But I do it for those reasons. You have an option as to what you want to use for yours or nothing at all. It's a fair question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Others?
Alex, there was a question about if you could repeat how you use each of the 3 different Zoom platforms and what you use them for.
Yeah, so the web I typically use to schedule meetings, and I also have, when I record, like today we're recording this, so the recording will be on the cloud, so I'll be able to access that recording via the web. The desktop is what I use to launch meetings. So I launched my desktop and then I clicked on Run Meeting, and this came up. And then when I'm on the road and I'm participating in meetings, I often use my phone because my phone has a pretty good camera, so I can be seen. And if I turn my camera off, I can just have my earbuds and I can participate. And that gives me more flexibility. That's just how I use it. Great.
Alex, it's about 9:40.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so let's move forward to Zoom features for mediators. So these are the things that I want to discuss about
Yes.
what you can use. Oh, if you can just mute everyone, I think we have some background noise. That what you as a mediator can use to make the most of Zoom. And so there are 6 things that are helpful. Scheduling, multiple ways of connecting, the waiting room, screen sharing, breakout rooms, and the chat function. So I'm going to play this video, and these videos are short, so it'll give you a quick sense of how
scheduling a meeting from the Zoom web portal is quick and easy. From the Meetings tab, click the Schedule a New Meeting button. You're able to change the topic of that meeting, in addition to the date, the time, and the duration of that meeting. If it needs to occur frequently, you're able to set this as a recurring meeting and change how often it will occur. You're also able to change settings like generating a unique one-time 9-digit meeting ID or using your personal meeting ID. You're able to require a meeting password and change the video default settings for both the host and the participants in your meetings. You're also able to go further and enable join before host, muting participants upon entry, and the waiting room feature. Once you've scheduled the meeting, you're able to add it to your Google, Outlook, or Yahoo calendar, or scroll down and copy the invitation so that you can paste it and share it with anyone that will need to join your session.
So that is what it takes to actually set up a meeting. As you can see, it's very easy. It takes a little while to figure out what all the little checkboxes do. But once you know that, the actual scheduling is feather light. I want to show you one other video, which is around scheduling using Google, the Google Suite, which is why I like it.
Now that you're logged in, you can make any Google appointment a Zoom meeting with a single click. Create a new appointment in the Google Calendar. First, give your meeting a title and set the date and time or repeat recurrences. Next, simply click Make it a Zoom meeting to populate your link to join and meeting information. Add your meeting participants and conference rooms and edit the description as needed. To start the scheduled meeting as the host, simply open the calendar appointment and use the same link to join.
Okay, so this is why I like to integrate Zoom with my Google Suite, because what I'm actually able to do when I set up Zoom meetings is from my calendar, I just click on Make it a Zoom meeting, and that link goes directly to the participants and my invitees to the meeting with instructions on how to join. So it's really very easy. There's not a lot of overhead at all once you set up this function.
Alex, can you address a question from Glenn Dornfield, who said that he'd heard it's a best practice not to use your unique meeting ID number for privacy concerns?
Yes, great question. So Google, when you set up Google has 2 ways of creating these IDs. It gives you a static ID that you can, for example—
Alex, you're saying Google. Did you mean Zoom?
Sorry, Zoom. Thank you, Chuck. Sorry. Zoom allows you to create either a static ID, which could be your phone number, 555-1212, 212-555-1212. And if you do that, then that's a way for you to know that anytime you have a meeting or anytime you want to talk to, let's say, someone who's well known to you, your spouse, maybe your child, and so on, then that would be the meeting ID that is always there you can use. But that's a security risk. So when creating public meetings either with things you're certainly putting out on Twitter or things with large groups or things with business contacts, you want to have an auto-generated link each time. And the reason for that is, if you use your static link, then as far as Zoom is concerned, you're running one single meeting that spans 3 months or 3 years, that pauses and then restarts again. So anyone who knows that ID can anytime join that meeting. So if that's what you want, for some things you might want that, then that works really well. But if you're using it professionally with different clients for different mediations, most certainly you want to have an auto-generated ID, not the same static ID. Thank you for the question.
So we have some hands up from Lou.
Sure. So let me just maybe cover, I won't play any more videos. I just want to cover some of the under the hood pieces with Google.
Alex, there are a couple of questions. Are you up for them now? Lou Blanchard and then Richard Lutringer.
Let me just hold these questions. I want to go through without playing this because I see we're at 15 minutes. So I'll just share with you briefly the things that I think are important for mediators to know about Zoom, and then I'll take all questions.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so you have multiple ways of connecting. This is another advantage of Zoom, that for a person who has video abilities, they click on the link and they show up. For a person who is remote and doesn't have video abilities, they can dial in and experience the session as a conference call. And I think in the mediation context, that flexibility is really helpful. I won't go through meeting controls, and I won't go through sharing a screen. We've seen how that's done. You can have breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms, I think, is helpful for people to see, just so you have a sense of what it is.
Hey everyone, Farah from Zoom here. On this brief video, we're going to show you how you can leverage our breakout room feature to take a large meeting or virtual classroom and split it up into smaller groups or sessions. You'll see that I have already enabled the breakout room feature, which you can find in your settings along the bottom. And that breakout room button will actually be right here. This is a button that only your hosts or co-hosts will be able to see. And right now we don't have a co-host in the session. If I manage my participants, I can hover over Catherine, for example, to make her a co-host. So she'll see this button now as well. When we're ready to split the group into smaller sessions, I can easily click this button to get a pop-up window asking me how many rooms I'd like to assign out and how many participants per room. For this example, it's recommending, since there are 6 people, we can split it up into 2 rooms. I can do this automatically or manually. So if we click on the automatic button, it'll create.
And just to let you know that for mediations, you want to do it manually because you want to be thoughtful about who goes into which room. For a training context, you can have automatic breakout rooms, just randomly group people together.
It'll generate those breakout rooms for us. Certainly, if there's anyone I want to swap out, maybe I want to move Michael to the other room, I can exchange him for a different participant. Once I'm ready to open all rooms, I'll click this Open All Rooms button, and our participants will be able to join the sessions that we've created for them. So we'll slowly see those people join. One thing that's really important to note is that as a host or a co-host, you can actually hop between the different rooms to talk to the participants. You can see here I have the join button. Now everybody's left to go to the rooms. I can broadcast a message to everybody and say, wrapping up in 1 minute. And this will broadcast the message. And then I can close the rooms, which gives them a 1-minute timer to rejoin our session. We'll give everybody a second to rejoin, and I'll show you 1 or 2 additional features with breakout rooms.
Okay, so you can watch the video on your own and learn about other features, but that's the one I wanted you to see, that it's easy once you have it set up to manually assign people to different rooms. You can name rooms however you want, plaintiff, defendant, party 1, party 2, whatever makes sense for you. And then you can assign people to those rooms, and then you can tell them when it's time to bring everyone back. You can go from one room to another. And so it's the same functionality as if you were in a different physical room where you'd be walking in the hallway back and forth. Okay, a little bit about chat. So one of the things you can do with Zoom is you can chat with people privately or publicly, and you can download those chats at the end of the session. Zoom automatically downloads that for you, so you can actually see the record of the chat. You can prevent participants from downloading their chats. In a mediation, that might be important. And you as the mediator can decide that you are going to dispose of that chat, but you have a record of it if you need it. And that actually might be helpful to memorialize certain things. Okay, so here is where I will pause because I'm sure that we have questions, and I want to just move to, let's see, how do I do this? I will.
Alex, while you're doing that, it's Chuck. To give people some comfort about this, your Nikki has reminded people that your PowerPoint will be available after the talk. And is it the case that you have clickable links in the PowerPoint? So if people want to go back and see whatever you have linked to, they'll be able to click and go.
Yes, so this is the link. So I just moved move down. So to subscribe and download, click on, go to conflictyes.com/mediators. There'll be a sign up form. And once you confirm your email, you will get a link, and it's not a PowerPoint, it's a Google Doc with hot links that you can download as a PDF or a PowerPoint, and then you can click and learn about all these things that we haven't covered because we didn't have time. So by all means. Yep. And so now I'll take your questions. I'll leave this up here, but I will answer questions for the rest of the breakfast.
Richard Lutringer has had his hand up for a while.
No, Lou Blanchard was before Richard, I think, but anyway.
Lou and then Richard.
I don't want to fight. Okay, so you did answer one of the questions on the sending out the notices. The other one was, can you set up a reminder to go out like a day ahead of time? So you've got the meeting all set up, and can a reminder be set up also to, or do you?
Of course. Yeah. Okay. And the reminder can be more of a technical document like, here are the links again, or you can just take the invite and paste it into your own email that says, looking forward to seeing you, here are the rules of the road, here's the technical login info, and so on.
Thank you.
And Richard. Richard Lutringer.
Needs to be unmuted.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
My question is, at the bottom of my strip, I have an icon invite. I'm a participant. Can any participant invite anyone else into the room?
Yes, it's possible if we allow that to happen. We can turn that off, I think.
Okay, but right now it's on, so I
Right now it's
couldn't.
on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And you can also, Richard, lock the meeting. As the host, I can lock the meeting, and that prevents anyone else from joining the meeting. We haven't done that because people are coming in and Nikki's letting them in. But in a mediation, you can just lock it once you have everyone there, and then no one else can join.
Noah Hampt, I think, is next on the list.
Noah?
Noah, you may need to unmute.
Unmute yourself. Okay.
He's unmuted. No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Quick question, when you're moving into a breakout room as a mediator, I know there is, but what is the mechanism for letting people know in advance that you're about to come in?
That you're about to come in, you can send them a message in the breakout room saying, I'm about to, may I join you?
Okay, I thought there was a ring or something that you can, like.
A chime. Yeah, you can do the chime, but the chime won't accomplish what you're describing. I think what you want is you want to give people the privacy to discuss something, and then you want to join them like you would like knock on the door type of thing.
Yeah, door knock, that's it.
Yeah, door knock. They actually don't have the door knock function, but I understand they're working on it. But you can send everyone a message. You can't send a message to only one group, but you can currently send a public message saying, I'm about to enter the group, let's say of group 1, or I'm about to enter the plaintiff's room. Is that okay? And then you would have to let them know ahead of time that that's how you'd want to run it.
Great, great.
Alex, I just wanted to jump in and say we'll try and answer, I think, the questions in the order that your hands are raised, and we'll proceed like that. And then also to Noah's point, this has come up a lot, and I think it's important to say that we've been using a lot of, JAMS at least, a lot of different modalities. So in addition to being on a Zoom mediation or arbitration, we also have all of the participants' text or WhatsApp numbers, so you can kind of virtually knock through that different channel, because you might not always want everybody to know that you're going into different rooms.
Right.
Okay, Cheryl Agris.
Yes. Question that I have is with respect to sharing documents. I know you touched on it very briefly before, but an issue, is I want to make sure that only one party sees the document, and what's to stop, say, I only want party A to see the document, but what if party A, somehow got another individual C into the room? How do I prevent, know that that won't be happening, because that is an issue that's arisen with parties. Like, for example, have a situation where there's mediation between party A and party B, and party A only wants party B to see it, but not individual C to see it.
Yeah, so if there are concerns like that, you want to outline them ahead of time and think about how you want to manage that document. And maybe in that context, sharing the screen isn't useful. What would be useful is having a document that you are sharing directly with that person's email account, like a Google Doc, and then that person sees it on their screen, but you're not using Zoom for that. You're using Google Doc, or you can use maybe Microsoft to share it, or some other way.
Right. But even there, if you're sharing with Google Doc, what's to stop that party from sharing it with party C, even for a limited time? They could easily, send it.
I think you have that same problem whether you're virtual or in person.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, sort of, because if you're in person, you just if I'm in the room with party B, I can kind of control access and just say, okay, you look at this document, and I'm staring at them looking at it and making sure they're not taking a picture of it.
Yeah, so that's a theoretical concern. I can tell you that from the mediators that I've spoken to who do this, that's not an issue for them, as long as people follow the rules.
I see, but what do they do then to prevent that, though?
They put it in the agreement that these are the rules you abide by.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's something to think about. All right.
Okay. Henry. Henry. Harry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had two questions. One had to do with the agreement to mediate, now that we're in this new world and there's new concerns and things they have to do. And the second question has to do with the use of a whiteboard, either real or virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Zoom has a whiteboard feature, and so you can definitely use that. You can also have a real one, but it's easier to use a virtual one. It might be easier to do it if you have an iPad, because you have a pencil, you can actually draw on it, than doing it with a mouse. But people do it all the time, sure. And you can save the whiteboard. You can actually download a picture of it in Zoom, so you can memorialize that.
And the agreement to mediate, a new agreement to mediate for this new world we're in?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, I would think there's new things that you would want people to understand and agree to. For instance, not having other people in the room,
right.
That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Are there any templates or anything out there that we can refer to?
Yeah, so I don't have a template. I know that there's a mediator by the name of Susan Guthrie who runs a training for, I don't know what she charges, but she offers that, something that she created for her students as a licensed product.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Terry Riker, we have 2 minutes, and then Rebecca Ratliff, and that may do it.
Alex, where are we on your ability personally to stay beyond 10 and the Zoom allowing us to stay beyond 10?
Zoom will allow us, and I will stay beyond 10 to answer as many questions as people would like.
All right, Terry Riker.
My question is, I would like to know, you had between 250 and 300 some odd people on this call. Can you create a list? Do you have access to a permanent list of who was on the call?
Do I? Yeah, I have access to that.
Through Zoom. I thought
Through
there
Zoom.
was,
Zoom has a list. I can do a report. I will do a report of everyone who's registered.
And that's going into the Zoom feature for a report? Is that what you're saying?
Zoom offers that as a reporting feature, yes.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Rebecca Ratliff. Unmute.
Yeah, I'm muted.
Hi, thank you. Alex, I was wondering, what was it that you suggested that we download in the desktop? It was, I forget what it would enable. Download something in the desktop.
You go to
it was when you were going over the Zoom flavors.
Yep. You go to zoom.us, and there search for download Zoom. And Zoom will know if you have an iPhone or an iPad or a Windows machine, it'll know which app to help you download. And once you have that, you have these other features that will allow you to upload a background, etc.
That wasn't it. It might have been the background, I know, but it was something you were specifically, it was around the time that you were talking about how you schedule meetings on the web, you launch meetings on the desktop, and you participate. But it was something that you have to download on the desktop to enable some capability, and I don't.
That was it. It's the desktop version of Zoom.
It's the desktop client.
That's it. That was it.
I didn't want to use that word because
that was it. That's what I was looking for. That's it. That's it. I'm like, no, that's it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Jill Sternberg.
Unmute yourself. Okay.
Jill.
Hi.
Am I unmuted?
Yes. I can hear you.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the actual adjustments that you make in the mediation process, moving from in-person to online.
Yeah.
So the actual process of doing the mediation.
So the biggest adjustment is anticipatory guidance. You know, people know what it's like to show up in a room at a certain time. They know that they need to, if you're in a building, to show ID to the security guard and so on. But people don't know what it's like to have a Zoom experience. So it might be helpful to do a dry run, just to log on, to test the technology. It's helpful to let them know what to expect and what it means and answer their questions. And to know that it's okay, we'll explore this with good humor. And if something doesn't work, we'll have fun with it and it's not a big deal. And then once people get past that initial sense of I don't quite know where I am and they get used to where they are, then they forget the whole thing. Once they know how to unmute themselves, then they'll just unmute themselves. And it becomes less of an issue. And I'm sure that you're finding yourselves as well when those of you who ask questions, the first time you looked at an unmute button, you kind of searched around a little bit, but the second time it comes naturally to you. And that's how I find people are with Zoom all the time, or any technology. So
Susan Meyerberg.
Transparent.
Oh, Susan Meyerberg.
Hi, thank you. During the call today, Alex, and thank you for the call. Oh, it says I cannot unmute myself because the host muted me.
No,
we hear you.
Okay. Why does it say that?
I think it
We unmuted you so you could participate.
Oh, okay. You cannot unmute yourself. Oh, I can't. All right.
What's your question?
My question, thank you. During the call, instead of the active speaker screen, it was stuck on another screen for a while. What did I do to make that happen? It corrected itself, but I don't know how I did that.
I'm glad that it did. I'm glad it worked out.
Susan, we call those gremlins.
Thank you.
Elon. Oh, sorry, Steve Marshall.
Yes. Alex, first off, thank you for a great presentation. Just going back to the Zoom desktop client, if you have Zoom for desktop loaded on your computer, how do you integrate desktop client so you can get the various backgrounds that you showed us?
There is, under the settings, if there's a little wheel that's there, and if you click it, you will see a whole bunch of settings, including backgrounds, video and backgrounds.
Okay, this will go on. Elon Weinreb.
One point that I just wanted to make about what we were talking about with documents that you may want not other people to see at a time. I had this come up in a mediation where I was using two separate decision trees for the two sides to give them a reality check. And I did not want defendant to see plaintiff's decision tree and vice versa. So what I did was I password protected both versions of the documents so that when I would have each one come up, I would be required to actually put in the password to correspond to the right document to double check myself so that one document for one side didn't go to the other side. Potentially speaking, you could do that with other people. It won't solve the problem of someone being in the room and looking over someone's shoulder or anything like that. But if you establish in advance that with documents that are specific to a side, you have to have a password put in before, whether you're using it or whether the other side is going to be using it on their machine. If you decide to transfer it over, it's a possible way mitigating any sort of improper information sharing.
Great, thank you, Alon. Great.
Okay, I just want to say that the meeting is officially over, but Alex has been nice enough to say he'll stay on. We can keep taking questions, but we understand if the numbers go down, if you have to get on with, you know, your third cup of coffee or whatever. Wade Cohen. Wade.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now we
Okay,
can.
good. Earlier, I noticed that Matthew's image was the screen and not this back and forth like is happening now. And I'm wondering, how did you make that happen and fix it? Obviously, when I messaged in, someone fixed it.
Okay, this is Matthew speaking. So actually what I did, I actually went into participants and I was actually just trying to do the self view. But what I ended up doing was spotlighting my video. So if you go into participants, you click on a participant. At the bottom, you'll see three options: raise hand, rename, spotlight video. And I guess when you spotlight video, then your video stays online.
Aren't you glad that I let you know that?
I was about to pick my nose.
No, you weren't, but anyway. So anyway, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun. This meeting was very well done, Alex and Matthew and Julie and Maria.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bart Eagle.
Hey, hi. Yes, hi. As a host, if I set up the meeting, I assume that I'm the host. But as the host, how do I go about muting or unmuting people or everyone, establishing the breakout sessions, working the waiting room? How do you do that as the host? Because I've invited people on calls, they've come on calls, but I see the exact same buttons on the bottom of my screen that I have in front of me now.
If you just, I would try that, and if you right click, you will see you have more features there.
But right click what? I'm sorry.
On your mouse. So if you, where you think you have all the same features, if you right click, sometimes you have new features, and it's hard for me to answer it specifically to your machine, but you can go to Zoom to their help section, and they have videos on how to host meetings and how to do certain things.
Oh,
and
okay.
I find it very helpful.
Okay, thanks, because I'm on a trackpad, so I can't right click anything.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Ann Dalton. Ann, unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you very much for this CLE or this presentation. It's wonderful. I've been having a problem creating breakout rooms in advance without sending a message to the participant. How do I do that?
So in the breakout rooms, there's a place where I know in my mind where that message is. It's hard for me to tell you where it is, so you might want to watch that video on breakout rooms, and it'll show you how to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Loretta Gastworth.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a pretty active mediator, and I'm also a full-time litigator. I have some trouble with the breakout rooms concept. So as a mediator, oftentimes I understand that there are breakout rooms, but there would be times that I need to step out for 5 seconds while the parties and party and lawyer discusses what offer they'd like me to convey. So is it that simple to come in and out and of a meeting room, a separate meeting room?
Yes.
And what assurances do I give lawyers as a lawyer that I'm not part of that discussion?
Which lawyer do you give the assurance to? The one who's not in the room?
The one, so I have a room full, a breakout session with a lawyer and a client.
Yep.
They want to discuss something privately. I want to, and so what assurances do I give them that I'm not in the room, even though I'm controlling these meetings?
They have to trust the technology. They won't see you in the room. So if you're on video, they'll only see 2 video boxes, themselves and their client. They won't see that third box, which is you. So they have to trust that that means that you're not in the room, which you're not.
Okay, and the coming in and out as a mediator, just to clarify something or to convey a quick message, that's easy enough to do?
To convey a quick message, you can chat with them. You can do it that way. If you want to come into the room, Nikki suggested this issue of sending them a text message using a different medium or WhatsApp, et cetera, to say, can I join you? Because Zoom right now doesn't give you the technology to ask permission. So they think of it as a training platform. So as a trainer, I'm just going to impose myself on the group when I want to for their benefit. But as a mediator, you have different requirements.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you for the lecture today.
If I could just, it's Chuck, if I could interrupt for a sec. Jack Hughes had a question a while ago that was related to a point you were making, and we're now, you know, we're sort of lined up to talk to you. Jack, if you're still on, I know your message came in before people who are now raising their hands. So if you're on, do you want to ask your question? Sorry, okay.
So Michael Cassandra.
Unmute. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I had to, I lost connection twice on my phone. So I came to my PC, which does not have a camera, right? But so my first question, I have two. The first question.
Actually, I think I see you. Your camera's pointing at you from
yeah,
the bottom.
because I just tried it on the phone and it came on the phone. So I'm now both on the phone and on the screen.
Correct.
So my question is there a rush hour now that's happening with Zoom meetings? So they all happening at like 9:30 in the morning?
Yes. So there is a rush hour, and typically the rush hour is on the hour. So if you want to avoid the rush hour, start your meetings at 9:45, not at 10 or 10:15.
Very good.
And of
Thank
course,
you for that. Thank you for
yeah.
that. There's a more general question I have, which goes to everybody, all of the co-hosts, because it's not specifically on Zoom, which is that I received a message yesterday from New York State that all of the court processes are going by Skype. Has anybody received that, and any comments on that?
I don't have any comments, but I don't know if anyone else does. But one thing I want to point out is Michael's solved this sort of technical issue by connecting to the meeting in two ways. So he couldn't, he was having trouble with his internet connection, so he dialed in, and so his audio is dialed in, but he's also able to then to see it, and Zoom has this ability to connect people. So if you're having bandwidth issues, you can call and also participate on video via your Wi-Fi. So you've just illustrated that.
And thank you very much, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.
On Michael's point about what the courts are doing, there's a tremendous amount going on. The courts are really scrambling to try to, they're doing everything they can to physically stay open for emergency issues. And they're kind of working their way through how to deal with the corona isolation. And they have it actually inserts itself when you go to the regular landing page URL for the court system, nycourts.gov. The first thing you're presented with is a collection of information about that, and you also need to check with the particular court that you're asking about, because each of the administrative judges and you know, chief clerks are doing different things, and it changes all the time. So you really have to, you know, make a local and immediate inquiry at newyorkcourts.gov.
Thank you.
Wendy Leeson.
Hi there. I just had a quick question about the breakout sessions also. You mentioned that someone could, well, the video mentioned that the organizer could broadcast, you know, 5 more minutes or 1 more minute into the breakout groups. Can the breakout group communicate to the organizer from within the breakout group to say, we need more time or something like that?
Via chat, I think you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
James Kinney. Unmute.
Yes, good morning again.
Good morning.
Am I correct in thinking your PowerPoint today is stored in Google Docs? Because I see on the top, docs.google.
Correct.
It is. And so I'm trying to, I just don't understand how the connection makes, is this as simple as you download Google Docs and it automatically becomes a feature in the Zoom platform? Is that the way it works?
No, you're asking about how are you able to see my Google presentation on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. So, by the way, let me just go back to the previous question first. I suggest this just as a best practice that you don't use the feature of giving people in a breakout room a 90-second or a 60-second timer. That's meant for trainers. As a mediator, I would probably want to ask my parties if they're ready to come back and then click them so they are aware that this is happening, rather than just tell them, surprise, you've got 60 seconds to speak and then we're all in the same room. But to answer your question, so the way that it worked was I created my presentation. There's nothing PowerPointy about my presentation at all. I did it all in Google Slides. So there is no PowerPoint. It's just a deck. So it's a Google product, which I created on the cloud using my Google account. I then clicked a button to share that and to project it in Google Docs as a separate screen, like I would on a monitor or a projector. And so then in Zoom, I'm sharing that view of it with everyone. I could share my desktop, I could share something else, but I'm sharing that screen, which is my Google Doc. Does that answer the question?
Yes, very much. Thanks for everything. Great presentation.
Barbara Manuso.
Hi, from Houston.
Yeah.
Alex, it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. But a curiosity, I can see 5 other people besides myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I often have 6 or 8 people in a civil case or more.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to see all of them, and I would want them to see everybody. Is there a way of expanding the visual?
Yes. That
and I
visual,
played around, I couldn't get it to work, so I don't know.
That visual is just yours. So that is unique to how your computer displays your experience of the Zoom session. My experience of the Zoom session is that I see a 5x5 grid, so I see 25 people. And you can change that by going to the upper left, I imagine, at least that's where it is for me. And there are 4 buttons: minimize, show 1, show 2, and show a bunch of squares. Play around with those settings and you will see how it'll shift.
I did, and I wasn't able to bring in more thumbnail sketches.
So the other option is if you go and you look at the lower left and lower right on your screen, you will see little dashes, which suggest that you can click and drag out your screen. And you might want to try doing that. And by shifting that, you will see different numbers of boxes pop up.
Okay, I'll try that. I'm working with a very large Mac screen.
Yep. So you should be able to see it.
But I haven't been able to. I've looked at a couple of those videos.
Oh, so the other part is this. I am currently sharing my deck. So if I were to stop sharing, you would see many more people. I have 2 monitors,
Right.
so that sharing isn't taking up the room in my computer. The other thing you can do is you can go to individual people and find their videos and you can pin them, which means that you can always see those things statically, no matter what else is happening.
Okay, well, that helps. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Almitra Casper. Unmute. Almitra?
Here, I'll do it. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. I tried to unmute myself, but then it said the host had muted me. Okay. So I just wanted to know how you did the closed captioning again. I have a sign language student that I will be teaching next week, and this might be helpful. I'm not sure.
Yep.
I'd like to know how you did that.
So this is not a Zoom feature. This is a function of the Google Slides. And when I create the Google Slides, there's a button there that says presentation, and that brings me to a different mode than creating the slide. Once I am in presentation mode, maybe I should do this. Let me just see if I could do this. Hang on. Okay, I am now going to share something else. So instead of sharing my presentation, I'm now sharing my screen. So you're probably seeing the icons at the bottom. So now, do you see that little window popped up? So in this window, this only happens when I'm in presentation mode. And when I click on captions, now it's starting to work. Can you see that happening as I'm talking? And when I take this off, it just changes it. Is that helpful? Great.
Okay.
Are we ready
It's
for Laura Castor?
Yes, sir.
I think I'm on.
Lou Blanchard, Laura.
You are.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I did a Zoom mediation on Friday, and I had two problems. One was when people drop off accidentally when they're in the breakout room, I did not realize that I had to go back to the main room in order to let them back in again.
Right.
So I just want to give that as a little side tip to people, because it can be a distraction at least. The other thing I wanted to know is, can you pre-populate the breakout rooms? I have enough trouble remembering who goes with whom than to have to deal with all of this. I want to maintain my own calm.
Yes.
So I would have loved to try and pre-populate the breakout rooms, but as I understand it, they have to have Zoom accounts. Is that the impediment?
Yes, they have to register. That's free, so they don't have to pay anything, but they have to register with Zoom. So Zoom has to know that these are the people who are going to be joining.
Okay, so it's not like just
these
clicking
people
the
assign
link.
them to these rooms.
So you can't just tell them click the link. You have to ask them to actually sign up for Zoom.
If you want to pre-populate the breakout rooms, you don't. So they can also just go into the meeting, and you can take a minute and you can assign them to rooms manually. It'll just take a few seconds once you know how to do it.
Right. Okay. And the other thing is, just for everybody, you can change the name when they call in. All you see is the phone number. And again, that's another thing to keep remembering if you don't know who's associated with the phone number. So as the host, you can change their name and put their name on, which is a big help. Thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Lou Blanchard. Lou, unmute.
There we go. Okay, well, it was in reference to Barbara's question. Yeah, but I think you kind of answered it. So if you go to that blue nine dots of blue and click on that, it'll allow you to, or if you go to the bottom corner and hover over the bottom corner, it gives you those little lines, and that allows you to open up the screen and you can see as many people as you want. Problem is, it'll also cover your whole screen. So if you're trying to see something else, you won't see that.
And I recommend having dual monitors to make your life easier if you're going to do Zoom mediations.
Okay.
Looks like Amy Porter is next.
Yep.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, you unmuted me. Okay. Hi. So I have a question about the camera. Let me see if I can put my camera on. Will it let me? Okay, let me see.
I see you.
You see me? Okay. I can't see me. Why can't I see me? Oh, there I am. Okay. So I have a question about this virtual background.
Yes.
See, I'm moving around and it's breaking up.
Yes.
And Elon said something about the reason for that. How do I fix that?
Yeah, you need probably a computer with a more powerful processor.
Oh, so I need to get a new computer.
Yeah.
Run right out.
Yeah. So,
or the other issue is you can, if you want a less expensive option, get a green screen and see if that helps.
Oh, that might be the answer, is the green
screen. That might help. Also, having a white background is more helpful than having a busy background. So what Zoom is doing is it's trying to correct every time it's saying basically, this isn't the one I want to see, so I'm going to fill it with this background. And the easier it is visually for Zoom to work, the less power it has to use. And the more capable the processor, the more it can fix on its own.
So if I got,
You could just put the cat there.
put the what?
Your cat.
My cat, you mean?
Like we don't have enough cat videos.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, so if I just got, in other words, if I choose, maybe if I choose a picture that has basically a white background,
right? Try
then
that.
I have this problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
try it. So if you can change it now, see what happens.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of choices. I mean, I'd have to play around. Like I could do it right now. Let me see.
Yeah.
Choose virtual background. Like I can choose, right? Like if I want to go to the beach.
Yeah. So that actually looks pretty good. Except it is a little, so you don't want to move too much.
Yeah. Well, just so I just stay still.
So and so the faster your processor, the more you're allowed to move without it becoming a fake background. And I see Barbara is somewhere in the weeds of the jungle.
She found it.
Right. I even see the waves. Wow, this is fantastic. I just want to stay here, actually. I'm just All right. Thanks. I will check that out. Thank you so much. This has been a great presentation. Hi, Chuck. Hi, everybody.
Hey. I'm not seeing any other raised hands. Does anyone see?
Neither am I. This may be the end of the line.
Oh, John Hughes just raised his hand.
Oh, Jack, you're back.
Two participants I see raise their hands.
And
yeah.
Jack, unmute.
I'm trying. Oh,
I just
there you are.
You, John.
Hi, Chuck. Hi, everybody. This is a great presentation. It's been so informative. Just to introduce myself, I'm Jack Hughes. I'm the ADR coordinator for the Bronx County Circuits Court. Just have a quick question. What happens if a party brings documents with them that have not been previously exchanged? How can they be shared with all of participants?
When you say brings, you mean brings to the virtual mediation?
Right, so they'd be remote. Say I'm in one room and then they're wherever location they're at, they bring documents that are germane to what's being discussed. How do those documents get shared with the other parties?
Are these documents electronic or are they paper?
Paper.
So you have parties with a stack of papers in a mediation that they want to then share electronically.
Yes.
The way I would do it if I had to is have them take a picture on their phone and then share those pictures. You have to digitize the document somehow, unless you're going to have the person showing a document to the camera, but that's not a really good way of doing it.
Right.
Okay.
If I could just respond really quickly about that. There is for decades, there's been a senior settlement coordinator, Michelle Kern-Rappy at Supreme New York, who has done a little pros and cons memo for members of the New York City Bar Association ADR committee. And in it, she mentions, for some reason, people seem to take, for obvious reasons, people seem to take virtual mediation a little less formally than in-person mediation. And one of her suggestions is remind people early and often, including just prior to the session, that if they have documents they want to share, they need to get them scanned or get some kind of electronic version of them and share them before the meeting happens by email.
Yep.
Okay.
And that
Loretta?
would be in your email.
Loretta?
I also see Michael Graff and Cynthia Boyce raising their hands, but not clicking on the hand raised thing. So I wonder, Michael, if you're frozen or is you just have your hand up the entire time?
I'm not seeing Michael.
I see his picture. I see his picture, and I also see Cynthia raising her hand.
I think
But
Cynthia.
click on the raise hand icon so we can the co-host note calling you.
We have Loretta and Nelson.
And Patricia, there are people waving as well. So yeah, we'll get to you. Okay.
Cynthia's question was, does Skype allow for video conferencing?
Does Skype allow for video conferencing? Yes.
Okay.
But not necessarily the breakout rooms. And then, so
Nick?
Michael Graff, I think, had his hand up for a long time, and he, so I just want to make sure we don't lose him.
Michael, you may be muted.
Yeah, he's muted. I'll unmute him. Okay, Michael, we can hear you.
Okay, I have two questions. One is.
Oh, Michael, you're literally raising your hand.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm tired too.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
You're going to be a real hit.
Two questions. One is how do you lock the room? You mentioned locking the room.
Yep.
The other one is, can the people within the breakout room talk to each other on their Zoom, and without having that that conversation broadcast to the whole array?
Yes. So the answer to your second question is absolutely yes. That's the whole point. Is that's the idea of that breakout, that they're having a private conversation, which is only between the people in that room. And the answer to your first question is, as a host, I can see that on my participant screen, I have an option under More Features to do a couple of things, including lock meeting.
I can't see it, but that's why.
Yeah, because you're not the host.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Is there anyone in line before Loretta?
Cynthia Boyce, I think, has her hand up.
Not seeing that. Okay.
Let me unmute her. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, first of all, I agree with everyone. This has been really fantastic, and boy, do I have a lot to learn. The first thing is, I don't see the hand raise. You said I'm supposed to click on the hand raise icon, and I only know how to raise my hand, my real hand, so I don't see that. And the other quick question was, talking about the this, you know, the nice screen that you can have rather than everyone seeing what's in my real life.
Right.
Is that part of, I just have regular Zoom, the free one.
Yeah.
So now no, I have to get the professional one to do anything. Is that part of the regular, or is that part of the professional?
Free. Anyone, as long as your processor can handle it, you can do this background. You don't have to have a pro account for the background.
Okay, so could you run through that again in the hand raising, and then I will be looking at, you know, sitting down and going through this again to learn as much as I can.
Yeah, so the hand raising is part of your participant bar. You have to make sure that's open to see it, and then you have those choices underneath. As far as the background, it's going to be on your desktop app that you download from Zoom. And
that's the client.
That's the client. Thank you, Chuck. Yes. And I go to Zoom, and you can just type in on their help. They have these video tutorials. Check on backgrounds. I'm sure they have a video tutorial on how to play with the background.
They do.
Great. Thank you so much. This is really fantastic.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Loretta?
Thank you. Wondering as if I can set up my screen to look like I would set up a mediation table. So if I could put a client with their attorney on one side and the other client with their attorney on the other, so I can visually see who's there.
So you're going beyond Zoom. You're talking about, there is something called Rebella, which is a product I have just played with, which is like Life 2.0. If you remember, they used to have that. It's a virtual world where what you're describing is this virtual experience. Now, maybe Zoom will have it. I've heard the CEO of Zoom talk about sending coffee smells across the Zoom platform, coffee with someone, and experience that. So it wouldn't surprise me that in a few years we're talking about new features, and you have glasses you put on and you see everything virtually. Right now, we're not quite there yet.
Nelson?
Oh, wait, Loretta. Sorry, Loretta had. Sorry, Loretta. You were saying something before.
Oh.
Wait. I'm trying to unmute you, Loretta, but it's not working. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
So I see. Let's say I have 4 people in the room with me, so I can see everybody. So there's no way to move that particular screen to a position.
Correct. Okay. There's no way to visually place people in different boxes.
And they come up. What order do they come up on? How they entered, or
maybe how they entered. I don't actually know what the order is.
It may be when they last spoke.
They also, they seem to shift during the session.
What I would recommend is you can actually rename people. So you can say, for example, P1 for plaintiff 1, or PA for plaintiff's attorney, if that's your convention, and then dash their name.
Okay.
That's visible only to you, not to the others?
No, it's visible to everyone, but everyone knows that that's the plaintiff's attorney.
Okay.
Right.
You tell them that that's how you're using to identify who's who.
Okay.
Okay, Nelson Timken.
Nelson, I unmuted you.
Okay, I just wanted to note that the courts want to use Skype. And the only reason that I've heard is that there are security concerns with Zoom. So they're going to go with Skype.
Yeah, I suspect the security concerns about Zoom are better known because everyone is flocking to it. I understood that Skype has, I mean, this going back years, I understood that Skype was not as robust in the security area, and in fact was late to the game about conferencing.
Well, the thing
but
about
there you go.
Skype-
That's the choice. That's the choice of the court system.
Well, the only thing about Skype now, it's owned by Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Office or you have, any other Microsoft products, I think it's just part of the package. And I think it's just, you have that company behind it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Patricia had her hand up. Yes, Patricia? Oh, you're speaking. Hold on, let me mute you. Okay, Patricia, I can
Good
hear you.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Patricia DeGuerre from Thornhill, Ontario. Alex, thank you very much for your generosity in putting this over. I heard people mention about the courts and their response. Here in Ontario, what the courts have done is that they have assigned to the participants a direction to go to Courts Call, which is in California, and they set up the whole proceeding. There's a charge of $78, and from there, it's taken care of. They're leery about Zoom and Skype because of security reasons. I'm not sure how effective that is. I know my husband, who's a criminal litigator, had a bail review a couple of days ago using the same mechanism. The other thing, Alex, I noticed that when you had the previous screen about 1.1 consultant.
Yeah, Patricia, can you lower the volume in your speaker? There's feedback.
I'm sorry?
There's feedback. If you can lower the volume of your speaker.
Oh, okay, well, let me move back from it then. Is that any better?
No, but okay, what's your question? Then we'll mute you.
Okay, my question was, you had 1.1 consultation, and then there was a 50% discount. Is that indicating if we download this session, we have to pay?
No. Those are separate things. You can register and download for free, and if you want a consultation, then you can apply that code.
Thank you.
Yep. Next.
Barbara Manuso is back again.
All right, I'm back. On the business side, across the country, I know all our rates change quite a bit. Are people making it more inexpensive to mediate, or are they bringing the price up? We have one person here in Houston that's made me furious because he's advertising the $250 mediation, and it started off as just $250, and of course got a lot of attention for that, negative, I would think, in most cases. But now he's being a little bit more vague, and it, I think, is becoming $250 an hour or so. So it was a hook. But just across the country, I'm curious. I've used, not as sophisticated, but I've done a lot of stuff online for ages, and I just kept my regular rates. But I'm just wondering what other people are doing and how you might think this applies. Because to do this properly and for the sophistication that's going to be needed as we go forward, it's not cheaper. It's actually, it's if you have your own space already, you're actually adding a lot of cost to make sure you've got all the bells and whistles. So what are your thoughts, Alex, and anybody else who wants to offer their wisdom? I'm happy to hear.
My thoughts is that over the long run, I think rates will go down because your fixed expenses will go down. So if you decide to do this virtually, you might not need to renew that office space. And so you'll be able to recoup some of that savings. That's just my personal projection.
Okay, Amy Porter.
I was curious, what is the particular program of Zoom that you're using now? Is it the same program that we can use for mediation, or are you using a webinar version? No. So in other words, the next step up, I think, is something like $16. And everything that you're doing now that you've showed us, is that something that we would be able to do by Zoom and be able to mute people just as you have? And
100%.
And show, so what is the difference, say, between using this type of Zoom program and the webinar, which I understand is something like $40 an hour?
Yeah, a webinar is meant for, and we actually thought about the webinar as an option because of the number of people. A webinar is a different animal, totally not appropriate for mediation. It's for creating something like this training, but for thousands of people. Or if you want to have a panel discussion that has up to 10,000 people, it could be 5,000 or it could be 900. People aren't, you don't have any breakout rooms. You have other capabilities where you can ask people to describe themselves in this poll like we did before the meeting. So before they sign up, they can say, I'm from California and so on. And you can also monetize this. So you can charge for these things via Zoom through a third-party payment platform, but it's not for mediating.
And so is there a way to charge, if you wanted to charge as a private mediator, you would not charge through Zoom, but you would charge through, oh, you can still charge through Zoom?
No, you wouldn't want to charge through Zoom, but as a mediator, there are lots of other platforms, Stripe, Squarespace, PayPal, Venmo for business. There are many platforms that will allow you to actually charge. And the software that I use, for example, is Acuity, which is a calendaring software. And so that allows me to charge people when they book an appointment. So it's seamless.
All right, well, so this is a lot that Zoom can do.
Yeah.
It's not, you didn't need to do a webinar for this.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's Chuck. I didn't realize I was on mute after, I can't remember who asked the question. Oh, the woman in Texas, the question about
Barbara Manuso.
Charging. Yes, thank you. My view about that is that what we charge our clients should be related to the value of the service rather than what it costs us to do. Internally, we obviously are in this to make a profit, so we want to make sure we're making money. But to me, it hadn't occurred to me until that question, and it was a great question. It hadn't occurred to me to charge anything different for a virtual or an in-person mediation. The truth of the matter is, I tell people all the time that I think virtual mediation is better than no mediation, but not as good as in-person mediation. So, but basically, I think if I'm still offering the service, it wouldn't matter to me, and it wouldn't matter to my pricing whether it was done online or not. I think the next hand. Oh, sorry, Maria.
This will be our last question, so that we can let Alex have his day.
Yeah.
Amy Hopkins.
Sure. So this is kind of an odd question, but I've had a lot of issue every time that I try and schedule a meeting. As the host, I'm getting a message that's saying that there's a meeting already in progress, and click to end the meeting and start a new meeting. I'm doing that. It's kicking off everybody that was allowed to join before the host. Any ideas around that?
I don't know. Yeah, I know that something happened on the Zoom side. It may be because we scheduled the meeting until 10:30 and it's now past that, and that may be an issue.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Alex, you have been fabulous. I think the response is pretty clear among those who are still with us. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to end this now. Okay?